out there. This is Pamela Fagan Hutchins, and I write mysteries. And because I write mysteries and do this fantabulous podcast, I'm at Bouchercon this week in Dallas, the 50th anniversary of the best mystery, thriller, suspense convention out there. And as a result, I'm coming to you with a lot of people that are awesome authors I wouldn't get the chance to meet otherwise. And if you would like the chance to have this podcast delivered straight to your device, if you'd like to support the show, if you'd like to see who my upcoming guests are, go out to my website, PamelaFaganHutchins.com, the Wine, Women, and Writing page, and you'll be able to do that. And you'll also be able to see my new release coming out and my USA Today bestselling mystery, so knock yourself out while you're there. Enough of that. I had the pleasure of meeting today a wonderful author who's agreed to be on the show. So you guys get the benefit of my new friend, Cynthia Swanson.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's nice to have you. Is this your first Bouchercon, or have you been to several? Or
it's my first one. My name tag has like a first-time attendee thing on it. Oh, yours
Look at
does
this.
too. Yeah, I've got that too.
We are newbies together.
We've got the orange tag, so we can be newbies. It's actually a good conversation starter because people are very kind, which is really nice.
They are, and I don't know about you, but while you turn on a camera and I start yakking, but you put me in a group of people and I shrivel up inside.
We're all writers, we're all introverts, and it's hard to remember that when you're around a lot of writers, that everybody feels the same way.
Yeah.
You sort of feel like it's just me, but it really is everybody.
It really is all of us, which is completely then challenging and awkward to try to get us to all meet each other without something like that name tag to help people know.
Thank goodness for name tag. If I had my way, we would wear name tag. We'd all wear name tags all the time.
Yeah. Something that
all over the world.
Please take care of me. I'm scared out of my wits. So when we met, which was only a few minutes ago, guys, I was told...
We're very close friends now.
Yes. But I was really intrigued to hear of some of the wonderful news and success that you've had with your books. And I want to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your debut novel, which was a few years ago, but The Bookseller.
Okay. Yep. So The Bookseller came out in 2015 from HarperCollins. It takes place in Denver, Colorado in the early 1960s, and it's the story of a woman caught between a dream life and a real life. Her name is Kitty Miller, and she owns a bookstore with her best friend Frida. She's 38 years old. She's never been married, and she's kind of come to terms with this life that she has. She's happy. She has her bookstore. She lives alone with her cat, and everything is lovely. And then she starts having these dreams where she has a completely different life. She is married to an architect. They have 3 young children, and she goes to fancy parties and gets her hair done and all of this, but her bookstore is gone, and she's no longer speaking to Frida, her best friend, and she has no idea why. So she keeps dreaming of this life, and at first it just seems kind of fun, and she's enjoying these forays into this glamorous lifestyle. But she does a little research back in her bookseller life as Kitty, and she finds that, but for a very small coincidence, her dream life actually would be her life. So it's sort of about those moments that can turn our life and send it down a different path. It's suspense. It's psychological suspense. It's kind of about the thinking pieces that change our lives and send us in a different direction.
What got you thinking this? Were you having dreams of an alternate life?
I didn't have dreams of an alternate life, but I did have just a sort of an aha moment where for a few seconds, I literally thought I didn't belong in my own life. And I hadn't written any fiction in a long time at that point. I had young kids, and I'd taken a hiatus from writing, which was sort of intentional because my kids were so little. But when I had that idea, I thought about that, and I really did, for a few seconds, think I didn't belong in my own life. And of course, the moment passed, but it got me thinking about a character who thought that, and I thought, well, that's interesting. But if you're going to think that, and if you're going to keep thinking that, there's got to be a reason. And it's got to be a psychological reason. So I started doing some research into the psychology around that and what would make somebody start having those kinds of feelings. And that's where the idea generated.
Do you have a background in psychology, or
No, just a fascination with it.
Well, all good psychological thrillers start there, right?
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's super cool. And so is it a spooky book? Do we start to be a little worried?
You start to be a little worried. And I think in any fiction, no matter the genre, you should be worried. When I read, I like to worry. And I think a lot of readers like to worry. We don't want to be too complacent.
Right.
So regardless of whether it's an edge-of-your-seat thriller or something like this that's more psychological, you still want to be kind of concerned. What's going to happen to these people? And we want to care about them enough.
We need a stake. We need a stake in it. So
right.
now, with the Bookseller, a little bird has told me that you have had some really fun news and things going on. Please tell us about the movie.
Sure. Yes. So the Bookseller has been optioned by Julia Roberts. She's slated to star and produce in it. And they have a script that they've completed. David Auburn wrote the script, who wrote The Lake House and several other movies, did the screenplays for those. And the latest I've heard is that Julia is thrilled with the script, and everybody else is thrilled with the script, and they're shopping studios. So,
oh my gosh,
the
that's
movie
exciting.
thing is one of those things that you just, the advice I got from my agent early on was don't count on it until you're sitting in the theater eating your popcorn. But it's such an honor for a debut author from Denver, Colorado, to have somebody like that be that interested and that enthusiastic. And she's been working on this project now for years. So she first became interested in the book 5 years ago. So it's a while.
What's been your role in it? Are you totally hands off?
I am completely hands off.
Is that a good thing?
I think in some ways it is. I think even if you're into it just a little bit, unless you have 100% control, I think it would be very, very difficult to know which pieces to keep and which to let go. So, if you're J.K. Rowling, you get to make the movie you want. But if you're Cynthia Swanson, debut author from Denver, Colorado, and Julia Roberts get interested, you get what you get.
Yeah.
And
you say thank you.
Exactly. You say thank
please?
you, and you realize that she's got a creative genius that is a different kind of creative genius than mine, and she loves my story, and that's an honor, and I know she'll honor it, and bring her own vision to it, and I'm excited about that.
And there's so much that's different about the medium of film versus a book anyway.
Absolutely.
And the art of writing a screenplay, the art of producing one, the art of directing one, all of these are very different. And so unless it's something that we've developed skills in as authors, it's not our thing. I went to a really cool Megan Abbott speech a few years ago where she was talking about being involved in writing screenplays now and all of her projects that hadn't gone through, but how it had gotten her so interested that she'd started just doing screenplays.
Right.
I have no desire. Do you?
No. I mean, I would rather write more books. So, I have another one that just came out last year, and I have one I'm hard at work on. So, there's only so many hours in the day, and I'd rather spend my time working on more novels.
I loved the diving deep that you get to do with a novel, and getting to go deep into setting and description and character.
Right.
So it's fun, and I want to hear about the next book as well. Okay. I'm going to cheat because I'm going to call it. I was going to say I know the Glass Castle name is already taken.
Right.
The Glass Forest.
Thank you.
Was number 2.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So the Glass Forest came out in 2018. And it also is set in the early 1960s, as is the Bookseller. It is a different setting, though. It's mostly set in New York and a little bit in Wisconsin. And it's a 3-way narrative. There are 3 main female narrators, and the first one is named Angie Glass. She's 21 years old. She's newly married to a man named Paul Glass, who's older, and they have a baby boy, and they live in Angie's hometown of Bailey's Harbor, Wisconsin, which is in Door County, Wisconsin, which is a beautiful, idyllic place. And Angie feels she's hit the jackpot. She's married this man who just showed up in town, and he's romantic and handsome and wonderful. And they have this baby, and she thinks everything's great. And then the phone rings one day, and it is her husband Paul's niece, Ruby Glass. And Ruby is 17. She lives with her parents in a small town in New York State, about an hour outside New York City. And she reports that her father has committed suicide and her mother is missing. So Paul and Angie drop everything and fly to New York to be there and take care of Ruby during this calamity that's going on. And Angie goes expecting to mother this girl. She's only 4 years older than her, but she's like, well, I'm a mother, I've got a baby, I'm married, so I'm the adult here. So she expects that that's going to be her role. She doesn't know this girl at all. She met her once at her own wedding. So they go, and she expects that that's what she's going to do, but she finds that Ruby is not what she had expected. This is a girl who is much more sophisticated than she thought. She doesn't talk a whole lot. She only tells you what she wants to tell you, which is very, very little. But as readers, we're getting chapters through Ruby's viewpoint. She's the second narrator. So she's just giving us little snippets of what happened in her family and why her parents are not around. So we're just getting these little bits and pieces from Ruby. And then in the meantime, the backstory is being told by Celia. And Celia is Ruby's mother. She's the missing woman.
Okay.
And her story starts in 1942 when she met Ruby's father. She met him during World War II. He was a GI on leave in New York City, and they had a whirlwind romance and got married, as many people did back then.
Yeah.
And people were actually encouraged to do that, to marry these guys before they left. And so she did, and got pregnant with Ruby. And then he comes back from the war, and he's a very different person. He's now we would say he had PTSD, but back then that was not diagnosed very often. So their marriage is not what she expected. And so we're getting all that backstory, which gets us up to the present day of 1960. And it all kind of comes together then, and we find out what happens. And if you look for me later, if you're at Bouchercon, well, this will post later, but I'm actually going to be dressed as Celia later on today.
Oh, yay! I'm excited. So you'll be a 1940s...
1960s Celia.
1960s.
Right around late 50s, shortly before she disappears. Okay. So if you're looking for the missing woman, she's going to be at the bar at Bouchercon. You don't even need to read the book. That's where she'll be.
Right over there at the bar, having a, let's see, Drop Dead Red martini. That's what they've made for us.
Yep, that sounds about right.
So the fascination with the 1960s.
Mm-hmm,
what takes you back to that era for your stories?
It's interesting. With the Bookseller, it originally was set in the present day, and I wrote about a quarter of a first draft before I realized that the present day was not going to work for the story. And the reason is because, without giving away much of the story, I can tell you that missed moment that I mentioned earlier, it takes place because somebody doesn't show up somewhere they're supposed to be. And now in 2019, if somebody doesn't show up, what do we do?
We track them.
You get out the phone. Where are you? You text them. You call them. You check and see if they posted on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I even have like an app on my phone to track where my children are.
Exactly.
We know where people are. So I realized the story would not work.
Yeah.
Because the character had to not know what happened in a way that only happened before we had the technology we have now. So I thought, okay, I'll take it back to an earlier era. How about the 60s? I love the 60s. We can do the clothes and the cars and the architecture and the hairstyles and all that. And I did all that, and it was really fun. But what also happened is that I found that the social issues, particularly around women and work, became fascinating to me. And I learned a lot, and I brought a lot of that into the book. And then I felt like when I finished that book, and that book was on its way out in the world, I wasn't quite done with that. And there were more issues around that I wanted to get deeper into, which is what I did with The Glass Forest, particularly with Celia. As I mentioned, her husband comes back from the war. He's got PTSD. And in his case, undiagnosed, he just checks out. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't go get a job. He doesn't go to college. He doesn't start a business. He does nothing. So she has to become a breadwinner in the late 40s and 50s, she was a complete oddity, and she never could find her place because of this, and which I find tragic, but I still think that happens to a lot of women today, where you can't find your place as a mother and as a wife, and you can't quite find your place in the business world. You don't quite fit in completely in either world in a way that men seem to slip comfortably in between both of those arenas.
Why would we keep talking about balance? Why would we keep talking?
And you never hear men talk about it ever.
No, they have it all.
They do.
They've always had it all.
They do have it all.
And if a woman tries to have it all, how do you balance? It's like
right.
I just live.
I get that question every time I do a talk, and I have never once been to a talk by a male author who's been asked that question.
Yeah.
I know how they balance. They balance because they've got somebody else who's driving the kids around and, making the appointments and doing all that. And I have a great husband. I have a wonderful husband who's really, really helpful. But still, we all expect women to do those jobs.
Absolutely. And I have a great husband, too. And I have friends that don't.
Yeah, right. I don't know how they do it.
that, really want to stab me for having a great husband,
Totally. Yep.
So I love that you explored that with the books. And now, are you a Denver native?
I'm not. I've been in Denver for about 20 years. I've been in Colorado for almost 30. I was in Boulder for a while, and I'm from Wisconsin originally.
Okay, there we go. I heard a little in your voice,
and then we moved to New York, which is why I talk ridiculously fast. It's the New York. The tiny little bit of New Yorker left over in me is the talking fast.
Yeah, and there's still a hint of Wisconsin in there.
Yeah,
it doesn't come out much.
Yeah,
but
yeah. When I talk to anybody from the Midwest, it totally comes out. Then I sound like I'm practically from Canada.
I love it. I literally had a guy once in a restaurant turn around, and I'd been drinking margaritas, and so my accent was coming out. And I started talking like this.
Yeah.
And he said, "Honey, are you from Amarillo?" And I said, "Oh my God."
How did you know?
How'd you know? Okay.
That's funny.
So, and you know, you can take the girl out of Wisconsin and New York, but a little of it lingers.
A little bit always
I
lingers.
love, though, that you've now tagged some of the settings where you spent a lot of time and made a lot of memories in your 2 books.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now?
So I'm working on a new book. I've moved up a decade. It's set in the 70s, which has been a lot of fun to write because with the 60s, I had to do a lot of research. I was born in the 60s, but I don't remember them. I was born in 65, so I have very few memories of the 60s. But the 70s are vivid for me, and so I'm writing about the late 70s, which has been a lot of fun to revisit an era that I really strongly remember. And my main character is a teenager during that time, and then she's looking back at that. So it's a story. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's a family. There's a little bit of mystery, and there is a little of wondering what's going to happen among these people.
Very
and there's
cool.
maybe a little bit of spooky Halloween-ness, but it's very early in a draft, so I can't say a whole lot.
And here we are
Now,
on
here
Halloween,
we are on Halloween,
you know,
yeah.
talking about
maybe
this
next
book.
year I'll be dressed as that character. Be a lot easier. I can just be my
love
14-year-old self.
I love it. So do you find yourself, like for instance with your 14-year-old character, do you find yourself reliving your teenage years? And
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the magical things about writing is you get to try on old shoes and new shoes.
Right.
And so she did Kitty with Kitty was her name in the Bookseller. Whew, I'm wiping off sweat here.
You got it.
Did you find the dream very much, or that moment of recognition that you had? Did you share anything else with Kitty, or was
to share things with Kitty? Well, certainly a love of books.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when I first got my book deal at Harper, the first time I talked to my editor on the phone, she said, I love that this character is a bookseller. That's so wonderful. It's a great career for her because booksellers will love that, and librarians will love it, and readers will love that. Everyone will love that. She said, what made you do something so wonderful? And I said, I just kind of always wanted to own an independent bookstore. Like, who didn't? I'm just living vicariously through the character. So I do know so many wonderful booksellers. In Denver, we're really lucky to have some great indie bookstores. We have the Tattered and we have Book Bar, and I'm good friends with the owners of both of those. And I also interviewed the owner of the Tattered, Joyce Meskis, she owned the Tattered for 40 years. And she gave me some wonderful, wonderful feedback and helped me out with that as I was doing my research on that book. That's one of the wonderful things, too, is you make those connections. Yeah.
It is. And whether it's with the readers who relate to it, or whether it's with bookstore owners, or there's a lot of great people that love books.
That's right.
Like us.
Yes.
Very much like us.
We wouldn't be here otherwise.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And it's a bit of an obsession. I mean, once you start doing this thing, it doesn't always love you back, but you love them.
Well, and you couldn't stop. As far as being a writer, it's when people say, should I write a book, and they haven't written a book before, I say, can you imagine not writing the book? If you can imagine not writing the book, then maybe not. But if that's what you want to do and you cannot imagine not doing it, then do it.
That is perfectly said. If you're just thinking, oh, this would be something that might be a pathway to a good career, or
because you want to make a lot of money,
yeah,
right? Because we're all doing that. Right? Yeah.
Well, we have our tax write-offs, people. Tax write-offs.
Right.
But if that's why you're getting into it, you're going to be sadly disappointed because it's the obsession and the love and the inability to stop.
The inability to stop. Yeah,
And
I wrote
OCD.
this morning. That's what I got up this morning and that was the first thing I did was work on the new book.
When you guys walked up to me a minute ago, I was working on the book. And here we are at a convention, and
working on a book.
And again we're doing.
And we're not the only ones. There's 700 authors here, and I'm sure the vast majority of them are creeping off where they can to go work on the book.
I was talking to people this morning where they're working on books, and they're like, I don't think I can come out till Saturday.
No.
And I don't know that there's a gun to their head forcing them to finish a draft. I think it's more that inner I cannot stop.
Well, and also I think being around this many writers, when you get to a space where there are a lot of writers, you feel inspired to, you just realize everybody else is doing this too. Everybody's working hard, and you can work hard as well.
Some of my best writing's been done at conferences. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. And you guys, how exciting is The Sound of the Bookseller and The Glass Forest? I know you're going to run out and get them, and we will cross our fingers that Miss Julia Roberts stays engaged with this project. Come on, Julia.
She will. She's doing great. So now we just need a good studio. Everybody put out your good studio vibes for me.
Good studio. And you guys out there, have a super week, and thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to run out to my website, PamelaFaganHutchins.com, and take a look at how you can support the show and read a good female author, why don't you? Bye, guys.
Bye.